Charlie frowned. He wasn't a Wilson, so he wasn't tied up in all their family drama. He could see right away that Mrs. Wilson was just putting on a show. The Wilson family was in a tough spot. If they couldn't turn things around, the Wilson group would go under, and Mrs. Wilson would lose everything. She'd spent her whole life obsessed with appearances and would rather die than admit she was poor. So she was definitely racking her brain for a way to save herself. She'd tried bullying and manipulating Claire before, but Claire never fell for it. She even tried using money to get to Elaine, but Elaine couldn't convince Claire either. Now she was targeting Jacob, ready to use another sob story to get through to him. This was probably her last resort. And Jacob was already falling for it. He felt that old knot of resentment in his chest finally loosening, and feelings of respect and love for his mother started to surface. Tears welled up in his eyes as he said, "Mom, I don't really blame you. I know I haven't lived up to expectations. I'm not as capable or as strong as my older brother. I've disappointed you, and I'm sorry." Mrs. Wilson grabbed his hand, holding it tight. She choked out, "Good son, you understand how hard it's been for me. Even if I died right now, it would be worth it." Noah, who was standing nearby, rushed forward and said tearfully, "Mom, please don't talk about dying. Jacob and I already lost our dad. We can't lose you too." Wiping her tears, Mrs. Wilson said with satisfaction, "You boys really do care about me. If I died, I could die smiling." Then she added, "You two, you have to stick together. You're brothers. You know the old saying, united we stand, divided we fall. If you two could just work together, the Wilson family would have nothing to worry about. We'd be stronger than ever." Noah nodded eagerly. "You're right, Mom. I understand now. From now on, I'll work with Jacob to make the Wilson family bigger and stronger." Jacob looked stirred up too, clearly falling for the whole act. Charlie couldn't help but sigh. Mrs. Wilson was a master manipulator. In just a few sentences, she'd completely reeled Jacob in. Unbelievable. Fired up by his mother's and brother's words, Jacob was moved and said, "Don't worry, Mom. I'll definitely work together with my brother." When Mrs. Wilson heard this, she grew excited and blurted out, "Wonderful! That's just wonderful! Fantastic!" Then Mrs. Wilson turned to Harold and Wendy, who had been standing there silently with their heads down. "You two, apologize to Claire and Charlie right now. Even though you and Claire aren't siblings, you're still cousins. Blood is thicker than water. How can you always treat them so horribly?" With that, Mrs. Wilson glared at Wendy and shouted, "Wendy, especially you! After what you tried to pull at the opening ceremony today, you need to apologize to your cousin right now." The brother and sister immediately bowed deeply and said in a very sincere tone, "Claire, we were wrong. Please forgive us. We'll never do anything to hurt you again." Claire was a little taken aback. She had never seen Harold and Wendy act so humble. For so many years, those two had been at her throat, always looking for a fight. However, seeing them both apologize, she said kindly, "Let's just forget about the past." Mrs. Wilson was overjoyed and immediately said to Claire, "Claire, your dad is still recovering, and he needs to rest. The Wilsons' villa might be a little old, but the environment is so much better than that place you live in. Why don't you all move back in with us?" Noah quickly jumped in. "Yes, Claire, your father's health is the most important thing. He needs more than just a good environment. He needs to be in good spirits. So just listen to your grandma. Move back in with us. I'll even hire a couple of caregivers to look after your father 24 hours a day." Jacob was lying in his hospital bed. He was deeply moved when he heard this. His resolve wavered, and in a rush of emotion, he couldn't help but ask, "Claire, let's move back." Claire felt conflicted. She couldn't tell if her grandmother was being sincere or just putting on an act. But seeing her grandma, her dad, and her uncle all crying together, she was more or less moved. Besides, for her father's recovery, moving back to the Wilsons' house with its better environment, positive atmosphere, and proper care would definitely help him get better faster. Elaine also chimed in. "Claire, this is a great opportunity. What are you waiting for? Just say yes already." Claire was still hesitant, but with both of her parents urging her, she gave in. On the spur of the moment, she said, "Okay then, we'll move back." A look of pure joy spread across Mrs. Wilson's face, and her heart pounded with excitement. It worked. It was perfect. She thought to herself that the old tricks really were the best. Jacob was useless, Elaine was a gold digger, and Charlie was just a good-for-nothing con artist. Even Claire, who seemed so capable, had been fooled. The sob story had worked perfectly. Thinking this, Mrs. Wilson could barely contain her pride. Noah couldn't help but secretly give Mrs. Wilson a thumbs up. His admiration for his mother was overwhelming. She was a true master. The performance was textbook perfect. Her strategy was a classic example of thinking outside the box. Starting with his younger brother Jacob as a breakthrough point to eventually win over Clare, it was flawless. Seeing that his wife was being fooled, Charlie quickly spoke up. "Grandma, Uncle, moving back in isn't a problem, but—" Harold frowned and cut him off coldly. "But what? This is the Wilson family business. What's it got to do with you? You talk way too much." Mrs. Wilson raised her hand and slapped Harold across the face. She shouted angrily, "How dare you talk to your brother-in-law like that? Watch your mouth!" The slap stunned Harold, but he immediately understood. Damn it, he'd almost screwed everything up just because he couldn't resist taking a shot at Charlie. If he'd actually mocked Charlie, he would have revealed that his apology was all an act. His grandma's perfect plan, this, a self-sacrificing ploy to trick Claire's family into moving back, would have been ruined. Panicked by the thought, he quickly turned to Charlie. "I'm so sorry, brother-in-law. I ran my mouth. It was my fault. Please forgive me." As he spoke, he slapped himself twice across the face, trying his best to look sincere. Charlie couldn't help but laugh to himself. Okay, the Wilson family was really pulling out all the stops for this act. They were willing to do anything to see it through. To expose their true colors, Charlie said, "Like I said, moving back is fine. We are family, after all. But Claire's studio is up and running now, Kami, so I need to be clear about one thing. She won't be coming back to work for the Wilson Group." "What?" Mrs. Wilson shot up as if someone had stepped on her tail. "Absolutely not. I said we need to be a family, and that means putting all our efforts together. How can you move back to the Wilson family, but not come back to the Wilson Group?" Charlie smiled. "Grandma, you said you wanted us back to make it easier to take care of my father-in-law. We agreed to that. But rejoining the Wilson Group is not the same as moving back home, right?" "No," Mrs. Wilson said firmly. "If she's rejoining the Wilson family, she has to come back to work for the Wilson Group." Then she turned her attention to Clare, trying to sweet-talk her. "Clare, your company just opened. You don't even have any clients yet. It's so hard to run a business on your own. How will you manage? It would be much better to just close it down and come back to the Wilson Group. Your life would be so much more comfortable and easy." Claire sensed that something was off about her grandmother's words. It seemed Charlie was right. Mrs. Wilson's wanting them to move back in was a lie. What she really wanted was for Claire to rejoin the Wilson Group. So this whole elaborate act was all just to get her back. Everything she'd just done was a performance. A chill ran down her spine. If Charlie hadn't reacted so quickly, she would have fallen for it completely. So she quickly said to Mrs. Wilson, "Grandma, I'm grateful for the invitation to move back in, but Charlie is right. Moving back home and coming back to work are two different things. They shouldn't be confused, so I have to be clear. I can move back in, but I will not be rejoining the Wilson Group. I'm going to run my own studio." Seeing Claire's determination, Mrs. Wilson's heart filled with hatred for Charlie. She had gone to so much trouble, put on such a performance, and he had seen right through it with just a few words. Damn it. She quickly went back to her tearful act. "Claire, do you hate your grandma that much?" she sobbed. "Move back home. Come back to work. Our family can work together to reach new heights. Isn't that the perfect situation? Why are you so determined to hold on to your little studio?" Wiping her tears, she asked, "Does this mean you still can't forgive your grandma?" Claire said seriously, "Grandma, this isn't about forgiveness. It's about me realizing something important. Being dependent on others is not the answer. It's better to have something of your own, even if it's just a small roof over your head that you can call your own. It's much better than living under someone else's thumb. That's why I chose to start my own business instead of returning to the Wilson Group." Jacob and Elaine both jumped in. "Claire, why are you being so stubborn? It would be so nice to go back. So much better than trying to run your own business." Claire said without hesitation, "Dad, Mom, this is my decision. Don't say anything else. You can't change my mind." Mrs. Wilson knew it all came down to this. If Claire refused to come back, then it was pointless to bother with Jacob and Elaine. They were useless on their own. So she could only grit her teeth and play her final card.